Hey everyone, it's a dose of Dr. Drew.
Hey there, welcome. Let's get everyone a chance to come on in. In just a moment, we're going to welcome David Sheff in here, the author of Beautiful Boy. I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but of course with Steve Carell. Great movie, great book, and he's got a very important charity he wants to mention today. You can hashtag donate at beautifulboyfund.org/donate. We have a link also on my website. We'll tell you more about that in a minute. But right now, we want you guys come on. Yes, you are piling on in, Jason. That is true. Robert, Amanda, thank you. I'll give you guys a minute to show up. There should be some new data coming in from University of Washington really any minute. This is usually the time of day and the day. They let's see, the last data was on the 16th. Yeah, every 4 days they come out with new data.
And we have perfect timing with the press conference.
Yeah, and of course the White House press conference, we time everything with that unintentionally. But they should be coming on in today, it seems to me, from Dr. Murray's group at University of Washington. I was supposed to speak to one of his surrogates today, but it looks like it's going to be tomorrow, so I'll get more detail on what they're doing in those few days and how they time when they release this stuff. I am refreshing that data presently, and there's no new update there. There is, of course, data on the COVID tracking project. We're getting really right up at 800,000 cases. And I can talk about specific states, a lot of diversity amongst the states right now. It's not as though they're, as I said a couple of weeks ago, local epidemiology is going to determine a lot right now in terms of how things are rolled out and how we do the tracking and isolation of people that have this thing. California still sort of turned in the wrong direction, I think, all of a sudden. Let me actually look that up for you guys if you don't mind. Because as of yesterday, the hospitalizations had suddenly kind of gone up a little bit, which was really disconcerting. But the virus is in charge on some of the stuff. So 4886 hospitalized presently. Let's see what the COVID project or the COVID data projected that 4,800. On the 21st, we should be at a more like 2,000. So I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like when they get that data revised. If indeed I'm quoting the right data. Those might be total hospitalized as opposed to, well, it says currently hospitalized though. So again, 1,500 in the ICU. Let me see if that correlates with what they were predicting here. Yeah, so they were predicting more like 500 in the ICU. So that is not the right direction in California. Mm-hmm. So if indeed that data is accurate. So let's see what University of Washington does with that. Let me, at this point, welcome our guest to the show. The guest, of course, is David Sheff, the author of Beautiful Boy, and now also the brains behind the Beautiful Boy Fund. So, David, welcome back.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you as usual. And I don't know about brains, but otherwise.
Well, what should we say?
I'm grateful also, Mr.
The engine.
Also to be able to talk about that.
The engine behind. What? Tell us about the fund.
All right. Well, I've identified over the years something that you know well, just about how much suffering there is because of addiction and mental illnesses that are related to addiction, and now we're focused on. Of course, we're focused on this new crisis, the pandemic. But at the same time, the other problems don't go away, and people are every single day dying of overdose. And I've been aware that part of the problem is that we have not, as a culture, focused on addiction in the way that we need to, and I think that goes back to things we've talked about before, which has to do with the stigma. The way that we look at people who become addicted, and we judge them and we shame them, and because of that, we are probably we're just not helping as many people as we could. And when I identified that, I realized that there was something to be done about it, and that's to try to get more people the treatment that they need. We know that only 1 out of 10 people get treatment at all, and of those people, many get substandard treatment. So the fund was a way to take advantage of the fact that people were, giving Beautiful Boy some attention. A lot of it because of the movie that you mentioned with Steve Carell, and to try to get some support for some of the organizations that are doing this work. And just quickly, because of the coronavirus, I've been hearing from so many places that normally are helping people all over the country, or that are still trying to help people, with addiction and their families.
Yeah.
Who their resources have dried up, and so anyway, we've shifted things in a little bit so that there's a much more streamlined process to get money to organizations all over the country, and that's one of the things we're doing right now to help treatment programs, rehab.
Resources are scarce, and personnel are scarce, and environments of care are scarce too, because it's a lot of the outpatient programs had to close down, and a lot of the doctors are being encouraged just to do telemedicine, and 12-step meetings aren't available. It's challenging right now.
Yeah, it really is. And I've talked to places that part of because they have such shoestring budgets, a lot of their resources rely on volunteers. Now they can't have volunteers come into the programs, right. And so a staff that's very lean is trying to help. And the other thing about addiction is also, as we're switching so much now because of necessity to telemedicine, and in the addiction world, a lot of 12-step groups, you can't meet, so they've gone online, which it's fabulous for people that works for. But a lot of what helps people who are suffering addiction is connection to other people, and I'm not sure sitting in front of a computer and Zooming is going to be enough.
It
for
isn't.
Some people who need support.
It isn't. It really is, and I've contended this long before this outbreak, that it's bodies in space, one person attuning to the other in proximity, and then addicts having that challenge with proximity. They have to learn that that's a safe environment, and the Zoom sort of obfuscates all that. But I got to tell you, I've been surprised that people have gotten as much out of the Zoom meetings as they have. My experience has been that people are attending more meetings because they don't have to go anywhere, and people that have social phobia or discomfort speaking, that kind of stuff, those folks are loving these Zoom meetings. So it has a mixed blessing to it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And we're all quarantined up here and at my house in out near San Francisco, up in West Marin, and all three of my kids are here. David, Jasper, and Nick. And Nick, of course, is in recovery, and he's been on Zoom meetings, Zoom AA meetings every day, and he says it's just very profound. And he said one of the things that's coming up, again, reflective of what you were saying a minute ago, is that even people who've been in recovery for many years are struggling now with feelings of despair, and so relapse is common, and anyway. So those are they're definitely filling a void.
The toughest, the most.
We all worry about the people that don't they either don't have access or for whom, like you said, they need something in person.
But
other people in recovery or a therapist. Whatever.
It's interesting, the most vulnerable groups, and by the way, there's a lot of teletherapy available now too, but that too is sort of only goes so far. But the two groups that are most challenged are the newly sober, the very fragile newly sober, and then strangely the long-term sober. Because the long-term sober just going, I don't need these meetings. Like this is my reason to stop going to meetings. Oh my God, no, please don't. So those are the two groups that are getting extra challenge right now. So anything more on the fund in terms of how it works and what people? So let's tell them about the fund so people are encouraged to donate.
Sure. Well, you know what, the other motivation to start, or the genesis, was one of the deals we made when Amazon signed up to do the movie based on my book, and the movie's based on Beautiful Boy and also on my son Nick's book Tweak. And part of the deal was when we talked to them, they wanted to help do two things related to addiction. One of them was educate, and with this idea of the stigma, helping people understand how common it is. We all know people who are addicted unless we talk about it. Anyway, and the other thing was to really do some support for treatment and some research, and so the original, the fund was started in a sense. The fund was the first money that came in from, was a generous donation from Amazon, and once that was in place, then I realized that there was a good platform from which to start. And since then, I've talked to a lot of people who are in the philanthropic world, and they give money to many charities, but nobody's ever asked them about this world of addiction, because there aren't a lot. There are definitely some other charities and some other good ones, but there aren't a lot. They haven't been identified, and nobody anybody who reads, the newspapers and follows the news over the last years know what crisis is and how many people are overdosing and dying. So people have stepped up. And then, then in some ways, I learned that in the charity world, I never even could have imagined this before, but giving money is almost harder than raising money, and trying to identify places that donations really will make a difference, and, that we use the money, in a responsible way and really are helping people has been challenging, but, it's happening. And so, I'm grateful for that, to be able to make a very, very small
and
contribution.
to remind everybody,
what's going on out there.
We're very focused on an outbreak right now that's on track to kill about 60,000 Americans, while drug overdoses and drug addiction took 70,000 in 2018. I think we're on track to get about 100,000 this year, or at least 2019. And we're not, the kinds of attention this deserves is just, if you think about opioid deaths killing almost twice as many people as Corona. I understand it's because of a monumental effort that we've kept Corona down. I get it. But still, right. the zero effort the zero attention that we not that we're giving zero attention, but we seem to just forget about how deadly it is, and that how many lives are being taken by the opiate problem. And
I think you're right. And yeah, exactly. And, I think it's part of the reason that we're in such bad shape, that so many people are dying. It's because we just haven't given it the attention that it needs. And there are some moments where, there's a big crisis and all the politicians are making promises about, what they're going to do to help battle addiction, especially focusing on opioid addiction. And it's been a drop in the bucket. And otherwise we wouldn't have so many people dying.
Yeah, it's, one of the dirty little secrets in all of this, and you said only 10% of people get treatment. And by the way, treatment works. That's the other thing that's very frustrating about this, is that treatment does work. Not that people don't die in spite of treatment, happens a lot, but treatment generally works. And of that 90% that doesn't get treatment, when they go out and study them, 80% of that population says the reason they don't get treatment is they don't want it. And so we need to change the forces that move people into treatment. Whether I don't have a strong feeling one way or another, but we have to create drug courts or something that push people into treatment, because the disease makes them feel as though they're fine doing what they're doing, dying. That's in the nature of the condition. And I've been concerned about that for a long time too. You have any thoughts about that, David?
Well, I just think, it's exactly right. And, it shows, I guess, it shows how complicated this is. But the most important thing that people need to know is what you said. Treatment works, and it's not only motivation for people to actually get treatment who need it, to realize that they can be helped, but also, for the culture overall, which I think part of it is that there is an assumption that, people, addicts, alcoholics, whatever, they're destined to a life of addiction and alcoholism, and there's nothing much we can do. And, it's when people understand that it is a treatable problem, a treatable disease, then more people will support treatment. More people will be compassionate towards people who have this addiction, who have addiction.
Yeah.
People like you who are in the trenches, working as a therapist with people who have addiction, you don't have your work cut out for you, but you'll have people who, just help more people.
That's the goal. Let me propose something to you that I'm not one for messing around with nomenclature. I don't know. I think that adds to stigma. People think it reduces stigma. But I was talking to Dan Amon on a podcast, and he pointed out that the notion mental illness may be stigmatizing. Maybe we should just call brain diseases or brain disorders. And that's something I don't object to. How do you feel about that?
I don't object to it either. Yeah. For me, as a parent of somebody who became addicted, when I recognized, when I made that connection, it's not necessary for everybody to, but when I made that connection, it helped turn my anger and blame of my son and sort of the question that was going on in my head as a parent, Nick relapsed over and over again. what's wrong with this kid? Why is he, he must be, I must have done something wrong as a parent, or he must have some sort of serious, defect or moral, to keep relapsing. And when I did research and came to conclude that, that addiction is a mental illness, it was a huge factor in the switch from me, for me to be able to look at Nick instead of with judgment, with compassion, because I thought, oh, my son is sick.
Yeah.
He has this disease. But I don't care what you call it.
Me neither. That's kind of how I feel. It's all the same to me.
I think, whatever works for somebody. And I feel like, it is all of that. And, there's a book out, I don't know if you've ever spoken to Maya Slavitz, who talks about addiction as a learning disorder. I mean, and that makes some sense. I mean, to me, there are some, with all these theories, there are some limitations. And maybe it's a combination of a lot of these things.
Yeah, and there's what I like about it is that people are thinking about this disease very, very carefully and trying to improvise new ideas and new ways of approaching it. I'm all for that, and I the way, because of the way the DSM-5 is structured, we now parse out addiction into very, very, very tiny parts, and as we do that, I'm beginning to think that's probably a good effort, because it probably, whether you're a binge user, or let's say you're binge cocaine and alcohol versus a continuous opiate, there's probably something different there, and we should be parsing these things out to the very specificity of the brain condition.
Yeah, because, I guess, I mean, again, you're in the trenches, you know this way better than I do, but depending on someone's problem, they're an addict is an addict is an addict, blah, 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 so they need different kinds of treatment. And some, I do agree that, that maybe the terminology that has shifted to, that they've come up with calling it a substance use disorder.
Yeah.
That might be useful for some people, but also the fact that exactly what you're saying, that there are different severities of people.
Yeah, different manifestations.
Addiction is really useful. There are kids who are probably addicted to smoking pot, but it's not going to kill them in the same way as somebody who's been shooting, heroin for years, or shoot them as quickly. I mean, kill them as quickly, and they probably do need different kinds of intervention. So that is probably useful.
And we're encountering, your son maybe can be helpful with this. We're encountering a lot of resistance with millennials in terms of their addictive pathology is different than what we're used to. They're not old-fashioned drug addicts. They have a kind of a different quality, and they require a different approach. Have you noticed that at all?
Well, yeah, I have. And I think that maybe I'm actually curious to hear what you think about that. But the one thing I will say is that one of the things I hear from, I was going to say kids, I guess they're not really kids, but people that at age who are struggling, is that when they are put in programs or they're told, that the only way to get sober is to go to 12-step
they hate that. They
meetings.
hate that. They hate that.
A lot of them hate it because of, and I do think it's about, maybe it is about age and maturity and experience, individual experience. And a lot of people just say, that's the word they use when they talk to me about it. They hate it, or their parents will tell me, they've tried it and tried it and tried it, and they hate it. And I think that whatever the reasons for that, it just tells us that we have to, approach treatment for them in a different way. So what were you going to say about what's your observation about
that is exactly my observation. I think what we've noticed at the core is a lack of, this is not actually the right word, but I'm going to use it, of inspiration. Like the classic interaction we have is, and Bob Forrest is my main source for this, who deals with a lot of these kids. When he's sort of trying to motivate, inspire them. He says, do you want to sit in your parents' basement the rest of your life and smoke pot? And they're like, the response is, I don't know. What do you want me to do? It's like, oh boy, oh boy. So the sort of spontaneous, what is the word? Enthusiasm for life is sort of absent, and that's a hard thing to create.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder, the economy. There's a lot of different factors, but what's COVID going to do to that? It makes it even seem maybe more hopeless.
Or addicts kind of get their act together sometimes in extreme circumstances. That's just sort of what they do, and I'm hoping to see some because some creative destruction, let's put it that way, as the economists would say, creative destruction in all this that they can latch onto and find meaning in. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. I hope so, because I really worry about that group.
I hope so.
That group has been dying, and they go on opiates a lot.
Yeah, I do too. And at a time when, I just hear again about this what you're saying is this sort of bleak view of the future, because, the future is different than the future we were presented with.
Yeah.
That suddenly, what this, besides the risk of getting sick and knowing people who might be getting sick and all that stuff, what it's doing to the economy, imagine people starting out in careers, when all of a sudden, there are just so many fewer opportunities. The unemployment rate has shot up. I mean, it's just tough is probably an understatement.
It's wild, but maybe they feel like they have company now, because we're all kind of in that ship. You know what I mean? It's all kind of, everyone's in it together in a weird way.
You know what? Maybe you're right. And there is this other thing that goes on. I'm kind of even, when I read these things, I cringe a little bit, and even when I say it out loud, there are people who are suffering, and there is no good side to this.
Yeah.
People who are certainly who obviously are very sick, and their family members are, and people who are unemployed and all this. But there is another thing that is probably happening, and that is shaking us up in a way that maybe nothing else could have. It's been written about. There was a New York Times editorial about it that says that maybe we're going to realize that we can do without fewer things, and family or being close to people, for those of us who have that, is maybe more satisfying than being on this rat race and having a quieter life, working from home. I mean, a lot of the different things that are happening now, and maybe that is
we'll see.
Maybe
we'll see, right?
Help,
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So soon enough. So again, I want to encourage everyone to please help out if you can. Susan, the link on our website is. Give her a second to sign in here.
drdrew.com/beautifulboy.
There, make it easy. drew.com/beautifulboy. And you will help fund resources for treatment at a time when it is woefully unavailable. I don't see, for whatever reason, addicts are often the last advocated for, because people have this, they do have whether it's not necessarily stigma, but they have an underlying bias that somehow people choose to do this, or it's their responsibility, so-called, or something. So I think we always fight that up.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing that, the other point about it, quick, you're right. I mean, you're exactly right. You identified it. But the other point is that a lot of people who are suffering, can't advocate for themselves because of the nature of being an addict. You're not necessarily able to navigate these, really tricky systems to get help. If you have something else, if you have cancer, as hard as that is, there's a route forward, and you're probably able to advocate for yourself, or at least go to people who can and get some support. Whereas people who are, are addicted, especially ones who are seriously addicted, we were talking about this range, just aren't in shape to do that.
Yeah. But no, there's a lot of good treatment. There's a lot of novel treatment. There's a lot of interesting ideas out there. If you don't like one thing, you can do other stuff, but do something. Mm-hmm. Do something.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm was a little more resistant to some of the treatment options than at one time. Now I am open to all the improvising, because the circumstances for opiate addicts are getting so desperate, and they're dying of the synthetic opioids, the fentanyl, so commonly that it's an emergency, and we have to just get you. We got to save your life. We just got to get you on board here. So
I have a question for David.
Yeah, and we were talking about the limitations. All I was going to say quickly is we were talking about the limitations of Zoom therapy and Zoom, 12-step meetings.
Do you have any good suggestions for any?
They're there, and they are hugely helpful. I mean, for people who need support, people who are suffering right now, it's there.
Where would you go for a good Zoom?
Actually, I tried it, and if you actually search online 12-step meetings, there's a big website, and they're all over the country. And one of the things that you said before is that, you don't necessarily have to go to a meeting down the block. You can go to one across the country that happens to fit in with, with who you are, and you connect to people. 12-step meetings, mental health forums, things like that. I mean, just I searched it, and it's right there. AA
itself, AA.org, has a bunch of suggestions. they just sort of give you very, very, broad guidelines. And let's see.
Yeah, and Al-Anon for families too. There's if you go to the Al-Anon website, they too list online places to go for people who want support, need support.
Interestingly, here's a Hollywood Reporter article about it. Whoops, skip that ad, please. Come on.
You have to buy the subscription now?
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's making money.
I got to it. I'm trying to remember the names of them. I've heard some really, really good ones. Hold on a second. No. Hold on, guys.
Yeah, no, I've seen them too. I think there's been one in the New York Times. There's been one that was really good in USA Today. I think I even saw one in one of the business magazines like Forbes or Fortune or something like that, because people understand that there's a need right now, and it's there. It's different, and people don't necessarily who are in bad shape might feel really isolated and not know where to go. And so I think if you start searching, using Google to search for online,
especially if you live alone,
there's one for. I saw one also for depression. I mean, there you can find what you need, I think.
Also, in terms of evidence-based treatment, John Kelly finally published his Cochrane analysis just as COVID got going. I've been waiting for this for 2 years, and it got washed asunder by the COVID outbreak. But he put together a state-of-the-art meta-analysis that shows that 12-step is as effective as any other form of treatment, and it's free. So just something to keep in mind.
And it's free, and it's everywhere. I was actually surprised, to tell you the truth, because of the stories I hear, because of the stories about, we talked about how many people it doesn't work for, and how these young people really resisted, and, never discouraging people from going, and certainly having respect for the whole program because of how many lives it saved. But not realizing it wasn't maybe the way to go for everybody, and also wondering about its limitations. And so that survey, that research was, I think, really important.
Yeah. Again, he's not saying that treatment is for you. He's saying it is an evidence-based treatment that is as effective as other things. That's all. So, you can consider it an evidence-based treatment. You don't have to do it, but it happens to be the one that's free. So why not? I always say, well, why don't we push that a little bit in an age of no medical resources? All right, David, thank you.
I'm right with you now.
I'm gonna let you go.
Thank you so much. It's good to talk to you.
You as well. I appreciate it. Thank you for doing the fund and staying in close touch and stay well through all this and keep up the good fight. And how many years your son got now?
10 years. Just
10 years.
Celebrated.
It's a big deal. Congratulations.
Amazing.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, it feels like a miracle as people who are in the middle of who are in recovery realize. So anyway, well, thank you. It's great to talk to you. And you take care too.
Take care. Bye, man.
Okay,
God bless.
Yeah, a little bit of one of the little secrets about addiction treatment is that it takes, on average, about 4 treatments and 5 to 8 years to get sobriety under your belt. So that's just part of the process. It takes a while, and during that time, it gets very scary and very dangerous. I want to go to your restream here because there was lots of great comments I want to talk about. Let me see if I may not be able to get to them. It won't scroll up high enough, but you guys had all kinds of interesting things you were saying. So
one guy said he was going to Google that right after. He says, I'm an addict. I'm going to Google that right after the show.
Good. Monkey C, 22,000 to 440,000 projected in previous infections in LA County. That is true also in Santa Clara County. So it's looking like in California, in a population of 10 million, you're going to have about 500,000 people, roughly speaking, maybe 300 to 500,000 people who've been exposed to this virus, which is good news from the standpoint of the fatality rate. That will drop the fatality rate dramatically. Now, keep in mind, though, the fatality rate is going to drop in the face of all the aggressive measures we have taken, right? The fatality rate would have been higher had we not done that. So it's still, don't attack the measures we've taken just based on the fact that the fatality rate is going to drop dramatically. Let's be thankful that it's dropping dramatically. Let's also be thankful that my profession's interventions and therapeutics are really starting to work here. There should be new information from University of Washington any minute that will hopefully reflect some of that. Unfortunately, I think it also may reflect an uptick in some states in hospitalizations. Let me go through your questions again. You guys have, again, as I said, lots of good ones out here. Thank you, Kim. Well, Jesse, you're saying something horrible about drug addicts. Don't confuse people being awful when they're in their disease with the person being awful. They're on drugs. Their brain is not working right. You would be surprised. I get to see what they become later. That's what gives me all the hope and desire to help them. And it's a far different person you end up with than what you're dealing with when they were using. Okay. Sorry that I don't have all your questions lined up here.
It was nice to talk to him again.
He's just so positive and so great.
Especially after the first show we did with him and he got in a fight with Bob.
Yeah, I know. Well, Bob had a big energy about Suboxone back
yeah,
then.
they had a big. We couldn't
And
even post it.
I am now not only on board with it, I'm actually able to prescribe it myself.
Came
Yes,
back
of
and
course.
did the second show. That was really
That's
nice.
fine.
I mean, now we look back at that as probably like whatever.
Jonathan saying, I think New York City's done for a long time. Tourism, restaurants, loss of jobs. It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. And anybody else have a feeling or a sense or a hope that this virus will be seasonal and will really die down during the summer? I really have a hope for that. That could be a nice gift for a while. Al-Anon is fantastic, Margaret Campbell. You're exactly right about that. And Margaret Campbell, the other thing, I had an old patient of ours that got us very involved in a very significant, in the Hillside charity that we represented here on one of the podcasts, one of the streams. And Margaret Campbell
Her name
got
is
us
Margaret Campbell.
Margaret Campbell got us involved with that.
She's still alive.
No. Do I think type 2 diabetes is reversible? I do some of the time. Type 2 is sort of a diverse group. So based off the USC research, could we potentially be in the second wave now? No. It's a continuous wave, I would say. And it makes sense that we would have had this because we have so much contact and plane contact with China directly. Jason Brown.
Well, San Francisco.
Where are you seeing Celebrity
in LA.
Rehab season 1? That's interesting. I don't even know where I would find that.
What's that? What are you talking about?
He's rewatching season 1 of Celebrity Rehab. He said, and I'm like,
Oh, you can get it
Hulu?
on like iTunes or something,
Interesting.
or YouTube. I don't know.
Did I see
We don't
the
get
study?
anything
Yes,
for that,
Derek.
by the way.
Let's see what this study is. I'm clicking on it right now for you. Study finds there's been many mixed benefits on hydroxychloroquine. So that's, I will tell you that doctors are using it routinely. So it has some benefit in some cases. I've treated a number of cases now of COVID, and I've only had one where my peers didn't put the patient or I didn't put the patient on hydroxychloroquine. And in some cases, it really seems to make a difference. The problem is we don't know for whom that is. And it's essentially risk-free. It is risk-free. There's a rheumatologist here in Los Angeles that has something like 1,000 patient years collected, and he said he's never seen a single side effect from it. So it's chloroquine has a different, don't confuse chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. Chloroquine is a more risky deal with more cardiac stuff. Hydroxychloroquine, I've used it for 30 years and never even thought about worrying about the cardiac stuff. It's so rare. If somebody were on methadone with a prolonged QT interval, then we might think about it. But it's in a normal heart situation, no. Does a borderline personality behave like a drug addict? Yes, they can. They can look just like a drug addict sometimes.
We're getting so much medical information. We're all going to have to become doctors after this.
No, please don't confuse that with medical training. It's good. It'll keep you informed and able to be good patients. That's the main thing. I'm sorry, guys. I lost all those good comments you were giving me about 10 minutes ago when I was talking to David
What was
Sheff.
it about?
I can't remember. I just remember thinking, I want to answer that. I want to talk about
Just
that.
ask the question.
Yeah, I'm going to ask them to ask again, so trigger my poor
It's
memory.
always better to wait till we're done with the guest and ask your questions.
Yeah. Will there be more jobs after all this in California? Well, not that where we started from, right? A lot of businesses are going to fail. The businesses create the jobs. This is the thing I don't understand. Why we can't understand that businesses create jobs, and then the jobs and the businesses is create the revenue to create the government jobs. Here in the city of Los Angeles, there's going to be like a 20% reduction in the city staff because there's no tax revenue. There's just no money. There's no money, and that's because the businesses aren't working. I don't understand. I don't quite understand what people are thinking about not supporting businesses. I don't get that. Please enlighten me if you can help me. Oh yeah, Jonathan Mangaro, thank you about the court of public opinion and the negative. That has been a horrible experience, and it's all out of context, and you're not allowed to defend yourself. Any defense results in more craziness. So maybe in a couple of weeks I'll do a more definitive.
Let's talk about your show with Duncan.
Oh yeah, I'm on a show called Midnight Gospel. It's a cartoon with Duncan Trussell, and we recommend it highly. Susan, do you want to talk about your reaction?
Oh, it's so amazing. It's just amazing, and when I feel like the character you portray with the zombies on Twitter.
Don't ask, just watch. Yes. Oh, you feel like you're the president of the zombie country, the
Twitter land. Zombies.
Yes, president of Zombieville, trying to fight off the zombies. Well done, and I think that's an apt description.
But it's
Sherry,
really good.
Your good question about addiction and genetics. Yes, it is a genetic disorder. It's accounted for on the basis. 60% of addiction is accounted for on the basis of genetics alone. I've treated about 10,000 addicts, alcoholics in my time. I can only think of about 5 where I couldn't see a direct family link. It is highly genetic, and there's multiple genes we have identified that are candidates in causing this thing. So highly. No, Duncan Trussell, not Duncan Truffle, Jesse. Did you say Duncan Truffle?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Also, I have some good news.
Okay.
Tomorrow you're going to be on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with Nikki Glaser.
Which was a pleasure.
So it's the second half.
Yep.
We'll find out what happens.
You should watch the first half if you missed that. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, when she made fun of me.
She did tell a good story. But Susan, you didn't tell the other part of the Midnight Gospel.
What about it? What did I not say?
The 8th episode with his mom.
Oh, it was a beautiful experience. It made me cry.
A lot. So we recommend episode 1 and episode 8. Looking at Florida, you guys, he has not updated the data from Florida, so I really can't give you any update. It'll be interesting to see whether or not your death rate pops up because you had that period of delay. And if it drops off fast, that'll be a sign that the medical interventions have been more effective in stemming this thing than as much as we had hoped. Let's put it that way.
I just hung up.
What was that now?
It
is on Netflix. Line. Heather Adams. It's on Netflix. You have to search for it. It's called The Midnight Gospel. The Midnight Gospel.
Yes.
California is past its peak, Dirk, but there's been a little bit of an uptick. I'm waiting to see the data to see what that all means. And have they done anything to help homeless? The logjam has released a little bit. I'm not sure what to make of it. They're putting the homeless in hotels and motels, and that's progress. They are having a problem getting enough medical and mental health resources to them, which is predictable. Hello, Jay. And whether or not this really changes things remain to be seen. There was an outbreak today of COVID at the Union Rescue Mission, so we are going to be updating that, hopefully with Reverend Bales this evening on Fox 11. I do a nightly news broadcast on Fox 11 here locally where we update what's going on in L.A. County.
With Alex Michelson.
Do I agree the fear is worse than disease? Jay, see, my opinion on this is complicated. I believe that panic is never helpful. I believe you should listen to Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci. That's it. That's what I believe. And in terms of what I think about what they're saying, I could have an opinion about that, and maybe we are overly aggressive in certain areas, but that may be what we need to be, and it will work. And their job is to get us through this safely, and I know they know how to do that, so we should just listen to them and act accordingly. I mean, for instance, here's my opinion. I would just listen to what Dr. Fauci says, period, end of story. So when the states started closing down and Fauci wasn't recommending that, I was a little skeptical because I thought Fauci should be your North Star, as I keep saying. He should be our guiding principle, our guiding light. Sixth known king, what are IgG and IgM antibodies? they're the early and then the late antibody responses that we have to viruses. That's how the body, we mobilize a bunch of lymphocytes that produce antibody that attack and kill the virus. That's how our immune system works in broad strokes. And so a vaccine builds those antibodies so the next time it sees that virus, it attacks it. And that's what happens after somebody's had this illness. They can then attack the virus. But you have to clear it out of your system, and it's quite a job for your immune system to do. But if you have IgG and IgM and or one or the other, you have seen this virus before and you have been infected. The question is, are you no longer infectious? And that hasn't been properly studied yet, so we can't say it definitively. So that was one of the questions I wanted to answer. Somebody asked a question about infectivity and immunity after infection. And we have to show that the IgG-IgM response correlates with the ability to neutralize the virus. That's a special test. That's a kind of an expensive test. And so we'll have to see, what the research shows with that. My prediction, again, I shouldn't be predicting, is that antibodies will be correlated highly with immunity, but we have to see. Let me look.
What? Somebody wants you to comment on Sweden. Somebody also said, I think his name was Phil, said that he wanted to know if we wanted a psychiatrist from Sweden. His brother was a psychiatrist from Sweden.
That's interesting.
I told him to tweet me.
Yeah, Vanessa, your point is a good one. That the original, the goal of our shutting down was to prevent hospital resources from being overwhelmed, and we categorically nailed that. We got it. New York had a little struggle, but for the most part, we nailed that issue. The question is, by reopening, could we threaten the resources again? And by shutting down the way we did, we actually seem to have also reduced the mortality rate. So how much are we willing to tolerate with that? And here's one of my concerns, is that people get on television and media and they go, one death is too many. It's like, yeah, I know, it's horrible. One death is horrible. But we've got to be realistic. What is going to happen when we open up, and how many before we have to shut back down again? What is it going to be? How do we make that decision? I don't know. But to say one death is too many, the conversation just stops. Mm-hmm. We can't make any planning then, because then we can't drive cars and we can't do anything. I mean,
70,000 people died of drug overdoses last year. So
yeah, right. And one death is too many. Well, now what do we do? Because we just lost close to 100,000 people. Isaac Ben from Israel predicts peak at 6 or 7 weeks and then a dramatic drop. Where is 6 or 7 weeks? Jason or Armando? No, Jason. What kind of date? Were we talking? Middle of June or something?
I think New York is just so different than everywhere else. Like, obviously, Idaho is going to be different than New York, and California is different than Montana.
That's what I opened by saying. It's going to be local epidemiology that determines a lot of this stuff. What is your local situation? Does mania from medication allergy?
I'm so worried about New York.
Me and I bipolar. No, never had mania before. Stephanie, it means you are bipolar, but you may not have actually manifested it without the medication bringing it out, so to speak. But having it now been brought out, it's generally as safe as to consider yourself having it. But usually it's much easier to manage than somebody that has it spontaneously without the medication. So did I read hydroxychloroquine not as good as initially thought? I can tell you it works in some cases. It's being used routinely. There was a lot of enthusiasm for it. As predicted, it might have been excessive enthusiasm, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. There's certainly data that shows it does work. It just may not be
for some people.
Yeah, it just may not be
not good for all
may not be
people.
What we wished it to be.
There's certain people that shouldn't take it. But then it's not a one size fits all.
Right. This is a very nefarious disease. But I will tell you, the one thing I keep coming up against over and over and over again in the cases I've treated, and if you look at the people that have passed away from this disease, metabolic syndrome to me is the number one risk factor. And by metabolic syndrome, I mean obesity, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, insulin resistance. I have it. I have this thing. And I'm thankfully not obese with it, but you can easily become obese with it. And so if you look at the people that passed away, you'll see a lot of obesity in there with the metabolic syndrome. Something about that is prone to inflammatory activity and activation of the cytokine system, which is the devastating feature of this. And I know, Susan, you've seen this in me. I get, when I have a virus, a fever and a virus, I am so destroyed by it, I can't lift my head up. I can't walk. I can't.
I know.
And so something goes on in my body with viruses, and has always been that case, that it's just total devastation. And this is a bad one. So it makes sense that it would hit people like me awfully
Somebody
hard.
said, Sue, why worried about NYC? I mean, still a little bit of an issue, but the fatalities are half since last week.
Yes, yes.
Intimations are
New York City is getting better. New York City is getting
consistently
better. As I've said many times, I've offered my services there. They have not called upon me. I'm sort of disappointed, frankly.
well, when you finally realize it's not going to happen, it'll happen.
Yeah, probably. Remdesivir, people are asking about that. The data is looking good, but think about it this way. 2/3 of the people on Remdesivir improved, but 2/3 of the people on ventilators get better anyway. 2/3 of people in ICUs get better. So it's a hard thing to really correlate. I have information from an infectious disease doctor just 2 days ago who said he'd used it on 60 patients to no benefit. So that was discouraging. I thought Remdesivir was going to be a good one. BC, SC, no. Just because she had nausea, first of all, it doesn't mean it was the hydroxychloroquine, and it doesn't mean it didn't help. So if you have side effects from medication, it doesn't mean it's not helping. So please don't confuse side effects with didn't help. Obviously, Tom Hanks' wife got well, and so we can't say that it didn't work. We can say she had nausea, but guess what? One of the prime symptoms of COVID, nausea and diarrhea. So, so here we go.
Like when
and by the way, having used a ton of Plaquenil in my career, hydroxychloroquine, I've not seen nausea. I've not seen people get it. So, Okay, I'll do one more.
I want to get a good serum test.
You want to get a formal serum test?
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that too. You want to come to the office tomorrow?
When's that going to? Oh, you have one?
I can send it out. I'll look into it. Call me tomorrow. I'm going to be in the office, and we'll have the staff look at whether we can order that test, and if we can, you come in and get it. Okay?
Okie dokie.
Unless I guess I'll do it to you.
I know. I could call my doctor too.
I mean, they may not be. I'm going to be in the office tomorrow.
I don't want to go somewhere where I'm not.
Right, and we don't have anybody with COVID coming in tomorrow, as far as we know.
Oh God.
Yeah. So, well, the only it's the way my life works is.
I want to get it though, if I could.
I understand.
If I didn't have it already.
When I was on call, always the most patients would come in, and the most bizarre and the most sick patients would. And when I was on surgical call, I'd always get the worst surgical teams with the most pathologies and the most gunshots and the most stabs and blah blah blah. And now, of course, none of the doctors that work in my office have seen a case of COVID, and I've seen tons. That's just kind of the way it works with me. So, serology is the key, Monique. That's right. That's how we're going to figure out how we're going to get back to work. Who's had it and who does not have fibromyalgia is not a risk factor for this that I can tell. Unless your fibromyalgia is because you don't sleep because you have metabolic syndrome. Orange County, Daniel, Orange County, or in Florida, or Orange County in California. Info for Europe, Justin. Let me see if I can look. Yeah, I think I can give you some European numbers. What do you want to know? It'd be interesting to look at Europe. Huntington Beach protest heard.
I know, that's so funny. They want to go to the beach.
I don't blame them.
It's weird.
What are the symptoms of COVID? Jay, is that what you're asking?
It's going to be 91 degrees
Nausea is
this
one of the
weekend.
symptoms, but it's obviously fever, chills, cough. Those are the more classic symptoms, sometimes presenting with diarrhea initially.
It does feel good to get out in the sun, though.
All right, Chris, Poland, which is something I looked at the other day. Let's go look at Poland. Again,
yeah,
these
we were
data.
looking at that.
Yeah, data's a little old. It's about 4 days old.
They have a lot of beds in Poland.
Yeah, for the daily death rate is not expected to exceed 20 people in Poland. The hospital resource use way down. You're meeting nothing. Yeah, you have 100,000 beds available and you need 150 or something. So
Poles have
don't worry about that. The total death rate from COVID is predicted to be 646. So it'd be nice to know what Poland's, how they're doing that there.
Our housekeeper's Polish, and she has the best immune system I've ever seen. Her family all lived to
Well,
like
it's
105.
interesting. Germany is having low complications too, and you wonder if there's something about Germanic heritage and that sort of region of the world that might, You know, that's you too,
That's
Susan.
me.
Yeah, and so that might have some.
I've got some German in me.
And you viruses,
And the Czech people.
viruses bounce off you. They run away from you. So.
I know, that's why when I got sick at Christmas, I was like, this has to be bad. Because
And when I got
never get sick.
H1N1, you didn't get it.
No, I had it when we went to Cuba that first time. That's why.
You know what, Susan? It wasn't around then.
It was called the bird flu then,
no,
or something.
that's a different thing.
Oh,
that
it
was
is?
a different thing. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
Maybe it's my immune system.
Yeah, you're right. It was the bird flu then, but the swine flu was the one I had, and that was right.
Oh.
It came out right when I got it.
I couldn't keep track of them.
Okay, well, let's kind of wrap things up here. No, they don't just drop dead with the virus, though. Some people, Jack, do get cardiac events and will die suddenly, even though they seem to be doing well. It can be late in their their recuperation too. So, it's that kind of treacherous virus. Look, there's been Guillain-Barré syndrome with it. There have been vasculopathies and people getting limbs amputated because of blood clot. I mean, there's a lot of wild stuff going on with this virus. It is quite a protean attack, or at least it makes our body attack ourselves, like in Guillain-Barré. Guillain-Barré, our body attacks our own peripheral nervous system, and then we can't breathe and we can't walk, and it's horrible. So all the things you see with viruses, it's sort of like everything we've ever seen from viruses are all in this one.
Joshua made fun of my white trash heritage. He said, Germany or Florida, Mrs. Pinsky?
Both. Very funny, Josh.
I know.
All right, so let's kind of wrap things up here. Thank you to David Sheff. Be sure to check out his charity. I'm going to be on Fox 11 tonight. You can also go to drdrew.com and get all our stuff there and all the different podcasts.
Can you mention Dr. Drew After Dark?
I was just going to say, if you want a little breather from
this week, it's Tom Segura.
From all this, I have to tell you, I've done 2 with Tom Segura and 2 with Christina P.
Pig play.
Literally, when I finished.
What does that mean, Drew? Pig play.
You have to watch the After Dark to understand it.
I'm afraid. And the T-shirts are still available if anybody.
But that I literally felt like I'd meditated for 2 hours when I worked with them, because it was such a departure from all this, and it's a nice sort of escape. It's an escape. Don't think of it as anything else. They are funny. They are great, and we look at all the other interesting things that humans are up to.
Well, everybody needs a break from the realities of life.
Yeah, well, you get one at After Dark.
They can make fun of the white trash people on that one too.
Mike, I'm glad Suboxone saved your life. It can save some people's life. I'm not a huge fan, but I am an advocate for it when it saves lives and when it's used properly.
David Sheff really believes in it.
What are the numbers for the normal flu this year? I believe we have about 40,000 deaths. Like influenza, look it up. Let's look it up. Influenza cases.
Well, that's got to slow down too, because we've been quarantined, right?
You would think.
I mean, maybe you should look at last year's.
Well,
the numbers are not going to be pure this year.
Here we go. Let's just see what they got. But somewhere between 40 and 55,000 cases. They have a wide range of deaths. It's somewhere between about 30 to 60,000 cases, deaths. So influenza has been, 56 million flu cases. So we're at 56 million flu cases, and I'm giving you general numbers for this from October 2019 through April 4th of 2020. There's a range. 39 to 56 million flu, 24 to 62,000 deaths. So it's many orders of magnitude times more cases, right? We have close to 1 million cases of COVID. We have 50 million cases of the flu, but we only have about 50,000 deaths in spite of the 50 million cases, meaning that the COVID is more likely to cause fatality. But with all of our efforts, we've kept the fatality rate down to equivalent to the flu. So
what was it last year?
It's 50,000, let's just say, for the sake of argument. Yeah, it's roughly 50,000.
Is that because if you take the flu shot, you can get it, but it's not as bad?
A lot of people don't take the flu shot, and yes, sometimes the flu shot doesn't cover.
Because you can still get sick.
56 million cases, okay? 50 million cases, 50,000 deaths. That's in the last year. So when we focus on these numbers, you got to have a context for all these things.
Yeah.
So That's the difficult part of that. Again,
Well, and the flu can also affect younger people who have better immune system.
No, the flu can also kill younger people, what COVID doesn't seem to do. Though it just doesn't do it. Flu kills children, babies, that kind of thing. Flu's awful. That's why you should take your flu shot. That's what I was saying at the beginning of this thing. Every conversation should end with, get your flu shot, get your flu shot, get your flu shot.
Please.
Because that's how we reduce
and now
that
you're going to get your
56
COVID shot
million.
too.
56 million cases, 50,000 deaths. Think about that. That's from the last year from influenza. And we should be able to do something about that. Now, again, this COVID would have been worse had we not taken aggressive measures, but now it's coming in at about the same. And Travis is saying that he's been ruined by the measures, the cure for the efforts to curtail the virus, which is the concern I've had from the beginning, that how much of people's lives are going to be upended and destroyed.
Well, it's affecting us all.
Oh my God, yes. That's the one thing. Everyone's together on that. But some people are getting worse. That's
Yeah, but the banks still want you to pay your rent.
I know.
They should have given us a month off with everybody else.
Well, you can appeal to your banks. I mean, your banks, but then they'll end up getting you later. All right. So thank you for stopping by. And are we in here tomorrow, Susan? Are we gonna? Let me look at the calendar.
Sure.
Tomorrow. Yeah, we can come in the afternoon. We'll try to stop in again tomorrow, and we may take a couple of days off towards the end of the week. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to review for you all the.
Let's talk about your Sunday.
What's happening Sunday? Let me find it. I can't hear you.
Hold on, I'm looking for the.
We have some guests on Sunday. We're going to come back here and do the show here on Sunday.
Did I forget to? So we have oh God, I'm having a brain fart. Tyrus and his wife.
Oh yeah, Tyrus, former wrestler, who's got a lot of interesting things to say now, and a good friend and a good guy.
The banner.
And Tyrus and his wife.
So you can see who we're talking about, just in case you don't know.
The banner's up now?
I'm getting it. Hold on.
Okay. And Tyrus's wife, who has a nutrition company, and she's trying to help out by providing food to some people.
Yeah. I'll find it. Keep talking. Let me find it.
Do I think New York City and Long Island unintentionally did herd immunity? Well, they did it. They got closer to it than the places that locked down, right? Although even some place like California where we locked down, we're seeing that there is, about 500,000 people that have had the virus per 10 million. Now, that's not herd immunity either, but that's an awful lot of people that can return to work.
So here's the banner. Okay, April 26th, which is Sunday, 12 p.m. It's going to be earlier because we're going to try not to compete with the President of the United States, which we usually do every week.
Yeah.
And we did today, too.
Right.
His wife, Ingrid, who makes meals she has a sort of a delivery meal company, and she's doing it as a charity, and she called and said, I saw Dr. Drew is doing these charities, so Tyrus called us and we're going to have him on. We'll probably have a few other people too, some interesting guests as well on the call-in show.
And Jesse, the virus will not, if you get lots of flu shots, morph and strengthen. It always morphs and strengthens. That's what it always does. So we chase it, and that's why we never get it perfect, but we can chase it. We can reduce the effect of the flu shot. Can I check with Dr. Yadigar? I do. There's a Dr. Drew podcast coming up where Dr. Yadigar and I discuss in detail some of the treatments that are out there for
April 22nd.
Intensive care patients.
That one drops.
What's that?
April 22nd. What day is today?
We're 21st.
So it should be coming up.
So the Dr. Drew podcast tomorrow.
Is it? Are we on Wednesdays now? The Dr. Drew podcast.
I thought Tuesday, but
I am.
Yeah.
God, let me look and see.
Thank you, Sherry. We appreciate that. Very kind of you to say.
If you go to drdrew.com, you can see the links to it.
Mm-hmm. I feel obliged.
Oh yeah, he's on now. He's up.
Okay, good. It's up now.
Dr. Yadigar.
Monkey C says, "Hey everyone, stop buying Chinese products when we can." You are certainly at your liberty to make that kind of a statement, but let's not and let's not confuse China with American Chinese people, and let's be kind to our compatriots, which I know there's anxiety about taking action against China and somehow that bleeding over to our Chinese citizens who are many of our dearest friends. So please, everybody, let's be adult. Bring Jason Ellis back. I'm going to be on his show Thursday.
Love
so
him.
I'll be on Jason Ellis's show Thursday.
We'll have him back if he wants to do it.
Yeah, we can bring Jason back. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm on Jason's show tomorrow. Jason Ellis show tomorrow. So thank you for asking about Jason. I'll be on about 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Stern called too.
Thanks, Josh. And the Duncan Trussell. Again, the Midnight Gospel. To keep a lookout for it. All right, everybody. I think that'll about do it. And happy Earth Day, happy Earth Week, and we'll see you tomorrow. We've all been very focused on how to stay healthy these days, but we've not been talking about hydration. If you get coronavirus, flu, or even experience allergies, cold, a variety of everyday ailments, they all need hydration. And that's why it's a perfect time to welcome our friends at Hydra Lite back. This is a great product. You all know I've talked about it for a long time. This was the hydration product I wanted to invent, and they got it there before me. Now, remember, dehydration can make you feel sick, even a slight amount, and none of us need that anxiety right now. So stay well hydrated. I am thrilled to welcome our good friends at Hydra Lite back to the show. Longtime fans remember my obsession with Hydra Lite, which is literally the best hydration product I have found. I'm even more excited to introduce their brand new single-serve powder sticks. Simply pour 1 powder stick into a glass of water. They recommend 7 ounces. The powder dissolves instantly and creates the perfect balance of sodium, glucose, and water to deliver up to 4 times the electrolytes of your typical sports drink. And think about it. You can take this anywhere. You should have it on hand to just pour it into water, and you have a real significant hydration product. The other great news about Hydra Lite, the powder sticks, they are 100% natural.